Okay. So I want to ask, did anybody spend some time in prayer and get a revelation on God's calling on your life?
I didn't directly, but indirectly I did through Parker's sermon. I thought it just was like an extension of our discussion last Wednesday about calling. And I thought it was very moving.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely spent some time thinking about it. I don't know that I feel like I got any answers to it, but.
Well, it's interesting, the synchronicity with the scripture in the lectionary going along with the question of calling in the book we're studying. I presume that wasn't planned.
It was, well, no, the Holy Spirit planned it. We didn't.
There you go.
Okay, well, any other thoughts on last week's? I have to admit, I did not spend a lot of time in prayer about it either. I keep feeling like it's, this is bad because we're taking a study about redeeming our time. And I keep thinking that God is still showing me what this next phase of my life is going to look like, being married, not be planning a wedding, or you moved in already. Like, it's been a lot of change in a month.
Well, I think, Maria, you've also got to give yourself a little bit of grace and credit for all the work you did on the profile with the profile committee, and how highly consuming time-wise and energy-wise and focus-wise all of that was. So you produced an incredible product with your team, and you don't have to worry about it anymore.
No, thank you. It went to the diocese earlier today, and I just feel whoosh, weight off.
So yeah, I mean, I really think this past 6, 8, 12 weeks has been nuts for you. No wonder you aren't sure you're hearing any Holy Spirit voices.
Yes.
Hopefully you'll have more space now.
Yes, and now Craig and I are in this new phase of life where, I mean, he was staying in his apartment until, at least sometimes until December 28th, the day that you moved, and so us being together every night is just a new thing too. So we're getting used to it. I'm sure you all had to do that at some point. It seems like a really long time ago.
Okay, so just to call myself out, I had lived alone, I think, for 3.5 years before we married. And I'll tell you, if I had lived alone any longer, I would have been ruined. Because when we married, you were pretty flexible. I was having space issues. Okay. And it wasn't him, it was totally me. So it took me a while. Hopefully you won't have any adjustment period like I did. I wanted some space. I've gotten over it.
I mean, COVID.
We've been married 26 years, so I've gotten over it. But there was some adjustment for me the first year or two.
And we certainly had our adjustment time.
I think we're adjusting pretty well, though.
But we've had time to do it, like with COVID and stuff. But it is one of the things when I even thought about dating again at this age, I was like, there's no way I'm ever getting married again. There is no way I could accept somebody else who has their whole ways of doing things. And then I have there's no way somebody's going to accept me with all my ways of doing things. And then one of the things I learned is, even at the age of 58, you can change.
Yeah, we did.
So anyway.
We're kind of watching our son go through that because he's getting married next weekend, not this coming weekend, the weekend after. And he's been a bachelor an awfully long time. So we're getting firsthand to remember what that adjustment is like of of getting used to a new person in your life.
Have you adjusted to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Just
Good.
checking.
well,
Always
that's
good to
okay.
verify.
We've been married for 39 years and I'm not sure I've adjusted to him.
All I can say on that was good answer. Excellent answer.
You got that right.
Well,
Well,
I was
welcome,
kind of
Carol.
focused on wondering, you know, whose the Caven's dog was before.
Oh, these were both Maria's dogs.
Okay.
And now he's like weekend father because he's either in the office or working upstairs. So when he sits down, they don't want anything to do with me.
Right. And see, I would have guessed it the other way because the dog was on Craig's lap. Happily.
They like to hang out.
The grass is always greener on the other side. So.
Welcome, Carol and Robin. You joined after we said prayer. Thanks for joining.
I was trying
Okay,
to finish dinner. Sorry, I was late.
no worries. So let me just go, we'll hit on this question. I'm sorry,
I
Robin.
said, I'm sorry, I'm late too. I'm trying to.
No worries. Tonight, we're going to talk about things that don't roll your eyes. You got to listen to it. Rest, Sabbath, and eliminating all hurry from our life. So the opening question, and we might all be like, it might be hard to imagine this situation, but what would you do on a day if you had no errands to run, house to clean, or work to get done?
Have fun.
Sleep,
Agreed.
sleep.
I have no idea.
Paul, you're on mute.
I was just gonna say, you know, my situation is so different because I've been retired and I've been retired long enough now that I've completely broken away from my former occupation. So in a certain sense, you describe every day for me, but it's one of the joys of this stage of life is, you know, 90% of the time I wake up and I think to myself, not what do I have to do today, but what do I want to do today? And that's a real blessing. You treasure it. Me, that involves a lot of eating and reading the newspaper, but at least I get to make the decision myself. And I think I've said this before, but when I look at my children who are in their 40s and 50s, well, 40s, late 40s, I don't see how they do it. And I think, how did I ever do it? So I'm just confessing to be in a very different situation, although I think the same kind of moral issues exist.
I have to tell you, speaking of being in this phase of life, I just happened to be looking at you on Sunday when your youngest grandson came back from children's church and taps on you. And just when you look down at him, the look of unadulterated joy on your face to
Yes.
see him was so
Yeah.
special. I was just like, oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, well, that's what grandkids are for. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and watch the video. And we're going to start with it's two sections again. So I'll probably stop in the middle. But the first one is about building habits. The first section is about building habits of rest. So share screen. I don't know which one it is. So I'll just share here. Bring this up. I'm getting there, guys. Is it up there?
Yep.
If you've implemented the practices that I've been recommending in this series, you've already done a ton of work. Now, most of us need to learn how to rest more, and I would argue that rest is one of the most counterintuitively productive things that we can do. 3 rhythms of rest specifically. Number 1, what I call bi-hourly breaks, bi-hourly breaks, taking breaks roughly every 2 hours throughout your workday. There's a term scientists use called ultradian cycles, where your body pulses roughly every other hour in terms of energy. So you do really hard, really focused work for 90 minutes, and then you come down by taking a 15 to 30-minute break in order to re-energize for the next block of deep work. I'm a big believer in, if you work with your mind, rest with your hands. If you work with your hands, rest with your mind. If you're a carpenter or a plumber, it's probably not going to be very restorative for you to break with your hands. Conversely, for me as a writer, it's not very restful for me to rest by reading a book. So my favorite breaks throughout my workday are washing dishes or doing laundry or going on a long run. So that's the first rhythm of productive rest that we're talking about, bi-hourly breaks. The second is getting a nightly 8-hour sleep opportunity. Not 6 hours, not 7 hours, but 8. And trust me, I hate this news as much as you do, but the science is abundantly clear. If you get 7 nights of sleep in a row, of just 7 hours of sleep, it's the equivalent of not having slept for 24 hours. Now, are there some people who can operate on less than 8 hours of sleep? Sure, but according to the data, you are 6 times more likely to win an Olympic gold medal than to have this rare gene that enables you to operate at 100% on less than 8 hours of sleep. Here's the third rhythm of rest that is paradoxically productive as we strive towards our goals. Weekly Sabbath. Chick-fil-A is exhibit A here. When Chick-fil-A started back in the 70s, they had so much trouble getting landlords at malls to welcome them into their spaces. Because how in the world can a restaurant make as much money in 6 days as all the other restaurants do in 7? We all know the rest of the story. Today, mall landlords are begging Chick-fil-A to come back into malls because they've seen how productive Sabbath can be. When you look at the gospel biographies, you see Jesus embracing each of these 3 rhythms of rest. He invited his disciples to take a break and hole away with him for rest throughout the workday. You see Jesus sleeping throughout the gospel biographies. And yes, you even see Jesus reaffirming the good gift of Sabbath. So before we close out this principle number 6 of embracing productive rest, let me dive a little bit deeper into one of these 3 practices, the practice of Sabbath, the practice of ceasing and feasting once a week. Now, I grew up in the church and my family didn't Sabbath. Frankly, I don't think I knew a single family that practiced this commandment, that enjoyed the good gift of Sabbath. And when I did hear about the 4th commandment, it looked like this life-sucking, legalistic chore. This day filled with things I couldn't do, rather than what Jesus said, this gift that we get to enjoy. Jesus, talking to the Pharisees, said that Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And I get questions about this all the time. Well, Jordan, you're a parent of young kids. You never get a break. The work of parenting is work. So what does Sabbath look like for you? Let me break it down for you real quickly. Because if I'm honest, this has become the lifeblood of our family life. My kids love Sabbath, and so do my wife and I. So ironically, it starts with work. On Saturday afternoon, we do all the work we need to do for 2 days. So we're cleaning up the house, We're doing all the dishes. We're doing all the laundry for the week. We're making plans for Sunday, so we're not spending all day on Sabbath texting our friends to coordinate where we're gonna meet up for dinner. And then when all of our work is done, we order takeout from one of our favorite spots in town, some sort of epic dessert, and we feast. We chow down for 24 hours, feasting on good food, but more importantly, feasting on the Word. So we go to bed Saturday night, wake up the next morning. I spend more time in God's Word than I can the rest of the week while my kids indulge in a Sabbath Sunday only treat, watching a full-length movie and drinking a hot latte. Please do not judge me that I give my 7 and 5-year-olds lattes every Sunday. After that, we go get donuts on our way to church, and on our drive, we just talk about the things that we are grateful for God giving us throughout the week. At church, we feast on the Word with our church family, come back, have naps, enjoy swimming in the pool, board games. Very, very simple. But the point is, Sabbath for us is this island of get to in a sea of have to. That comes from Kevin DeYoung. All week long, we're executing our to-do lists. We're driving kids to soccer practice. We're doing the things we have to do. Sabbath is a day to recognize that we get to do joyful things because ultimately Jesus is our Sabbath. And because of his work on the cross, I don't need to be productive. I don't need to do more and buy more and be more because I am enough as an adopted child of God. If you haven't yet taken the time to implement the practice of Sabbath in your family, try it out. Treat it as an experiment. Try it for 4 weeks, see what works, see what doesn't work. But please open and enjoy the good gift of Sabbath with your family. All right, that's principle number 6, embrace.
Okay, I think that was a lot of food for thought. So let's talk about the first one. How realistic is it, do you guys think, to get up every hour and a half and take a break from your work?
Well, I try to take a break, but I don't know if I've ever been conscious of it being every half hour.
What interests me about it is that it seems to coincide with a lot of medical advice. You know, most of
Oh,
us
yeah,
are
it does.
desk workers now, and if you don't stand up from your desk with some regularity, it's going to catch up with you in very bad ways. You need to take a break.
Well, I appreciate the fact that my Fitbit every
Are you
hour
just backing up what?
reminds me that I need to get up and do something.
Come forward, David, and say that again. We couldn't hear you.
I appreciate the fact that my Fitbit at 10 minutes to the hour, if I have not gotten in 250 steps during that 50 minutes, will remind me that I need to get up and move.
Yeah, along those, what Paul said about recent exercise suggestions, I've read that if you get up 5 minutes every half hour, and which might be just getting up and standing and taking 10 steps, not doing something really major league exercise, but just get up, that can really help just all kinds of stuff, because it gets your body circulating and it helps your back and and we all know about carpal tunnel and all this other stuff. And apparently just five minutes out of every half hour can just make a huge difference.
Oh, good. I was afraid that I was hyperactive because I'm thinking back to when I, worked in a cubicle. And if I was just doing my own thing, I had to get up every 25 minutes to walk around the office.
Yeah, I really have to schedule in the getting up or the moving, because I'll get very focused on what I'm doing and I'll be oblivious. And then I'll wake up in the middle of the night, my hip extensors are screaming at me, right? It's like, I didn't move enough. So that's been a new thing So,
That, I think it's one of those things that happens with aging, that all of a sudden your
Yeah.
body's not as rubbery as it. Trust me, I'm there with you.
I could make myself sit still for meetings up to about an hour and a half. But then once an hour and a half passed, I started, becoming the bad employee. Walking out of the
Hour and a
room.
half meeting, you're not a bad employee. That's ridiculous. Sorry,
No,
who
that's some
should come to
bad
academia?
supervisor.
did I say that out loud?
No, that's a bad supervisor to expect that you
That's
the
inefficient.
tension for that length.
Yeah.
Well, and I always justified it based on my experience in college that, the longer classes were only an hour and a half.
Oh,
I
gosh.
mean, there was the 3-hour class if you only went once a week, but, they take a break in the middle. So it was like an hour and a half. Okay, I've been trained by the experts. I'm okay to leave.
I think you're confused. That was just the registrar scheduling things. It's based
it
on
seems like-
building availability.
I'll praise my
seems
alma
like this-
mater for that wisdom.
It seems like this one is one we all kind of agree with and kind of do in some ways. How many people get 8 hours sleep a night routinely?
That's aspirational.
Oh.
I aspire.
Robin
know-
and Kay?
I
I
do.
try, it's hard. Sometimes you just wake up after 7 and you're just ready to go.
I would love to sleep past 7. I can't get past like 5:30.
Yeah.
You mean 5.5 hours or 5:30 in the
Oh,
morning?
no, 5:30 in the morning, but I usually get 6.5 or 7 hours, but that's about, I'd like to get more, but I just.
Yeah, I'm more in line with you, Robin. I try, but lately I've been doing better, but I wake up about 4:15 to 4:30 to do the things that I need to do and get to my class and drive and all that stuff. So I'm with you.
But if you didn't have class, do you feel like you would sleep that amount of time?
No, it'd still be about 6.5, but it depends. I've got a total gym. And when I get on that at night, actually I'll sleep longer. I think that says I'm kind of high strung. Maybe.
So what do
We
you think
did.
about his assertion that if you go 7 nights with only 7 hours of sleep, it's like you've been up 24 hours?
I just think that's arbitrary. For one thing, it's age related. I definitely don't sleep as much now as I did 20 years ago.
Thank
And,
you.
So I just think everybody has their own natural sleep, and it's important to get it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we can all agree sleep deprivation is a bad thing. And if you're not getting your regular amount of sleep, that's going to have consequences. But the notion somehow that there's one set number for all of us, I just don't buy that.
No, I don't either. I don't either.
But
When I was
heard you
able to
say-
sleep 8 nights or 8 hours a night, I really noticed a difference when I didn't. I mean, I'm not able to now,
Yeah.
but there was I took in that information from the experts as early as, like when I was 15 or so. And so when I was able to do it, I was religious about 8 hours. And I really, really could tell a difference if I didn't get it.
What I heard him talk about was giving yourself an 8-hour sleep opportunity, I think was the word he used.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I'm also can't sleep most of the time, can't sleep a full 8 hours. I'm usually done after about 6.5 or 7, but on the weekends, I'll stay in bed and allow myself to get rest. And so even though I'm not asleep, I'm still using that resting time. And I do find that helps.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I do that, I feel like I stretch my muscles in a way that I don't do if I just get up out of bed. So I appreciated that verbiage he was using too, the opportunity.
That's one,
Go ahead,
if I
Karen.
don't get enough sleep, I'll take a nap. If I don't have an opportunity to take a nap, I will find myself going to sleep about 6:30 while I'm watching television, or if I'm reading or anything like that. I mean, I will just sleep for about 15 minutes, and that's really all it takes for me. When I worked, I would take a 15-minute nap during my 30-minute lunch break. People knew I'd come into my cubicle because I would lay my head down on the desk and go to sleep. And it made a big difference. Of course, I was going to work at 7 o'clock in the morning. So anyway, I just take a nap.
Kim Hall never sleeps. Do you, Kim?
Yeah, I'm listening, and I know what's right, and I'm glad I'm doing this, but yeah, I don't, not right now. I can't. There's not enough time, but it's bad. Like really bad.
Yeah, well, I've gotten much more focused on going to bed earlier than before because I drive when it's dark. And so I do get tired, and it's more when I come back home. It's more at night. So I don't, my big hope is that by the time I'm in my 70s, that we'll have self-driving cars. I've got a whole plan that we're going to have one, so I can just hop in it and say, take me to work. And I can take a nap if I need to on the way in and on the way home. That may not work. I've thought we should buy stock in it,
All right, so let's go on to the last one, the Sabbath one, because Craig, when I heard that one last night when I was prepping, I was thinking, Craig and I did that for like, I don't know, a month. We got busy with the wedding. But what do you guys think about that concept of just setting aside Sunday, no work?
I think it's important. I don't do it necessarily on Sunday, but I'll do it Saturday. I'm trying to do it Saturday. And part of that's because I kind of unravel by, Friday night. I just am tired, and, so Saturday works better for me. And then my mind isn't going about what I've got to do Monday. Whereas Sunday, my mind starts going.
Do you do it as a family?
Oh, well, with him.
Yeah. Okay. Carol, you were going to say something, but you were on mute.
Oh, you were talking about having a self-driving car. I am sorry. I don't trust technology that much. I would never be able to do that. I have a human that's going to make the mistakes, not a computer that's going to make the mistakes.
For me,
Anybody else? Go ahead.
should I go ahead? Okay.
Yeah, please.
I was just gonna say for Sabbath, for me, in terms of daily obligations I have now, one of the ones that I like least is the obligation to exercise. I just absolutely hate exercise, but for obvious reasons, I try to put in an hour a day on an exercise cycle, or some other thing that keeps me moving. And I don't always attain that. And 6 days a week, I feel guilty about that if I don't attain it. But on Sunday, I figure that's my day off. And one of the things I most love about Sunday is I don't have to exercise. Whatever else is sacred about Sunday, not exercising is absolutely essential to my religious observance. I
agree.
It's one form of devotion I'm very good at.
During COVID, we did a Bible study with another couple at the church. And one of the big things about that was keeping the Sabbath. And so I really kind of made some changes in life at that point. We have a family business in addition to the job I do at the church. So literally I was working pretty much 7 days a week. And so we made the decision to close the family business on Sundays and not have it be open 7 days a week. And I've given myself more permission on Sundays to say, I'm not going to do housework. I am just going to have a day off. And I would say that's helped me a lot to get through the other 6 days when I do work a week. So I definitely see the value in that suggestion. And I would say that when I practice it, it is very helpful to my mental health.
You and David practice it together?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
One of the things that, as I heard him talking, that I hadn't really thought about, but I thought, you know, the nicest time for our family, in a time when both of our kids look back and they say they love our cabin in Minnesota. And it was like having a 2-day Sabbath every week when we got up there, because we were cut off from, we had no phone, we had no TV, we had no chores that we had to do except for just, you know, we did cook, but I mean, it was just, and we were just with each other. And it really was like in a way, like the Sabbath, with the exception that when we were at the cabin, we didn't go to Sunday services, obviously, because we were away from town. But in other ways, it had many of the same aspects. And we look back on that time as it was just wonderful.
I will say it is a struggle to keep that because it's hard to put away the to-do list. And there are some times when it's easier than others to block out all the 50,000 things I should be doing and say, I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to take a nap.
Yeah.
Because I need to take a nap.
One thing that's very illuminating that for me was in grad school for 1 year, I shared housing with a very strict Orthodox Jew who was very observant about the Sabbath by his, you know, for him it was Saturday, but he would not even turn on a light switch. And he would not cook, you know, he would not turn on the stove, just anything that in any sense could be construed at work. But it was, I won't say it was inspirational, but it was a powerful reminder of how important a commitment, like, you know, how important a commitment like that is, almost regardless of what the commitment is, that if you do something that does take an effort and that does require conscious accommodation with your otherwise lived life, it's probably a worthwhile endeavor in itself.
Couple of inquiries going through my mind. One is when he was talking about preparing for Sabbath and getting all of these things done, I'm kind of wondering if carving out time for a Sabbath would force me to be more efficient with my time when I'm not in Sabbath. And so maybe there's not a net loss of available time to get things done then if I have that forced efficiency built in there. The other inquiry I've got going through my mind is along the lines of thinking at this phase of my life, a full day of Sabbath each week probably isn't realistic and I'd be setting myself up for failure. But if that's not possible, then maybe carving out 4 hours, 6 hours on a particular day to truly set aside and, you know, spend time with God, whatever, you know, we do in Sabbath, be a start. It'd be something. I don't know.
We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, it'd be fun to do that together.
One of the things that I've had to do to make it work. So I have some dietary restrictions. Okay. And it's really important that I eat or that I avoid certain foods. And then and so it's just not possible for me to really go pick something up. Okay. So I do a lot of like meal planning and prep. That like I have cooked and frozen enough food to get to spring break. And it's already all organized. I know that sounds crazy, but it's all organized already in the freezer. So we just pull out a bottle on this, and I'll spare you all the details. But then on the weekends, what I'm starting to do now, so I can have that time where I'm not doing anything, is like crock pot dump meal. Like I think I did chicken tacos.
Mhm.
So I just put that in the night before and turn it on and get the beans soaked Thursday night. They're on, in the other crock pot, because now there's just one because it died. But anyway, there used to be 2 crock pots. So it's all cooked. So when I wake up Saturday, because I'm kind of disorganized. It's kind of like I'm not on the road, I'm like, okay, it's Saturday, but I really need that time. I really need that day, I think, to kind of just to renew, but that's why. So I'm bringing that up because that process that I have has evolved over time. But then there's always food.
Yeah. Okay. We got it. So thank you all for sharing. We'll come back to this at the end, but I want to move on to this last habit because it is one that basically is a way to reorient your mind. And so it's not one that any of us, it's one that all of us could do. So let me move on to that one. Those 2 checked. There we go. How do I get him to start again?
Productive rest. We've come a long way. We're finally at the last timeless time management principle in this series. Principle number 7, eliminate all hurry. Obviously a term borrowed from my good friend John Mark Comer and Dallas Willard. It's this idea that when you look at the Gospels, Jesus was crazy busy, but he was never hurried. So what's the difference? These 2 terms seem very similar. How are they distinct? John Ortberg once said that busyness is an outward condition. It's a condition of your body. It's having a lot of things to do, while hurry is this inner condition that you can feel in your soul. I know I'm busy when I have a lot of meetings on my calendar on a Monday. I know I'm hurried when I've got no time to think in between those meetings or look other human beings in the eye because I'm rushing to get to the next one. Busyness is having a lot of errands to do on a Saturday, but I know I've crossed over to hurry when I get mad about choosing the wrong lane at the grocery store that cost me 30 seconds. And again, when you look at Jesus, he was insanely busy and productive, but he was never so busy that he was frantic or anxious or snapping at the other people in his life. That's the difference between busy and hurry. And we've got to fight to stay on the right side of that divide. How? Here's one uber practical practice. Not surprisingly, we've got to say no more to the things encroaching on our time. Now, we got to be careful here because a lot of the secular wisdom around saying no is totally out of line with Jesus's example in the Gospels. I was watching a TED Talk recently, very, very popular TED Talk, where the presenter was saying, if you can't say heck yes to something, say no to it. Yeah, that's just not what I see in the example of Jesus. There's this one scene where Jesus just found out that his cousin John the Baptist had been beheaded, and all he wanted to do was be alone. So he went into a boat off to a solitary place on the lake, but the people ran around the shore waving Jesus to come in. Jesus was not thinking, oh my word, I can't wait to go help these people. He wanted to be alone, and yet he sacrificially said yes to their requests. What's my point? Sometimes Jesus said yes to people's requests for his time, but other times Jesus said no. We saw this in our third session where Jesus said no to the request for more healing. So where does that leave us? It leaves us needing to spend a lot of time in prayer and discernment over the things competing for our time. Over the years, I've collected a number of questions that help me discern the right time to say yes and the right time to say no. I just want to share 3 of those real quickly with you before we close out this series. Number 1, would I say yes to 100 similar requests for my time? So the next time somebody asks you to go grab coffee to pick your brain on something, ask, would I say yes to 100 requests for a similar meeting with me over coffee? Because here's the deal, whether we like it or not, every yes or no we're giving contributes to the building of a habit, right? It makes it harder or easier to say no in the future. If you asked me today, if I would come to the funeral of a friend, I would say yes every single time, 100 times over. But if you asked me if I could have coffee with you with no agenda, I probably wouldn't say yes to that meeting 100 times, so I'm gonna say no. Here's the second question. This is a great opportunity for what? A lot of times the thing we have a hard time saying no to are things that are once in a lifetime opportunities or opportunities we just can't miss. But saying something is a great opportunity is actually an incomplete sentence. Great opportunities that are not connected to our mission, our callings, or our long-term goals aren't great opportunities. They're just really shiny objects that stir up frantic excitement in us and distract us from the work God has called us to do. Finally, number 3, am I trying to do good or make myself look good by saying yes to this request for my time? A lot of times, I think a lot of us, including myself, are saying yes, not because we think we could serve really well, not because we think the request is tied to our goals, but simply because we can't afford the shame that comes with saying no. But here's the deal. If you're a follower of Christ, you have no need to look good. You are a son or daughter of the King. That's who you are, and he has a mission for your life and specific work that he has called you to do. So don't worry about looking good. Worry about doing good for his glory and the good of others. We've come a long way in this series, walking through these 7 timeless time management principles from the life of Christ. If you want to go deeper and access some more hyper practical practices to help you redeem your time, pick up my book, Redeeming Your Time, 7 Biblical Principles for Being Purposeful, Present, and Wildly Productive.
So without getting too much, we have a little bit of time to get into the tips that he gave, but to me, the whole notion of being busy but not hurried, it was more like it's an attitude. And how many people do that? Like you feel like you get in the wrong line, or you're kind of irritated because there's 2 people ahead of you in the grocery store because you're so busy. Am I the only one that does that?
I have made a large part of my career doing time and motion studies on the manufacturing floor. I get very angry when I see somebody just wasting time that I could be in the other lane. So I felt very convicted on that one.
Others?
I do think it speaks to how it affects us, because there's lots of days when you're busy that you just go about and you feel like you could cope. And then there's those days when you might be equally busy, but you just feel overwhelmed by it in some respects. And I think that's what he was talking about, how all of that stuff to do makes you feel about life.
Yeah, but it also sounded like an attitude, like,
Right.
we don't have to get irritated by the person next to us because we're so much busy, like, to me, it convicted me because I tend to do that and get like, well, don't they know I have to get 3 other things done? No, they don't. And they don't care.
Right.
Right. Well, right. You're getting angry because you think some situation is going to prevent you from fulfilling your obligation. Definitely been there.
Yeah, but then the other side of it is like one of the things that we hear in the gospel is always be able to give a reason for your joy, like be Jesus to the world. And we can be busy and be Jesus. Jesus was busy, but this is me, if I'm running around and I'm all tense because I'm like, I am hurried, how am I ever being Jesus to the world? Like, that's not presenting Jesus to the world.
One of the things that occurred to me is hearing talking about the, frustrating on the lines, is that I think depending on the way a store is set up, they recognize that is just, I think it's basic human nature. If you feel like somehow, especially if you're in line and then you get up there and they say, oh, well, I've just closed, you've been waiting in the line or something. And if in a store when it's really busy, often they'll set something up to make it, to help you. Like I remember we were at Central Market right before Christmas and they had somebody supervising, which they showed you which line to go to. Because there are so many people in the store and they knew that the lines were going to back up. And so they had a monitor to make it a more pleasant experience. And there are a lot of times so that I think I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think we should beat up on ourselves if feel like we got on the wrong line. Because that's just something, it's the way things are run sometimes that puts you in a position to make you feel frustrated. But I don't think it's because we're bad people. I think it's because if they line things up, if they structured things better, people would feel better.
I can't help wondering whether, to some extent, this feeling we all share of there just not being enough time is a function of modern life in particular. And let me try to illustrate. When I was younger and going through college, I worked as a photo engraver, making printing plates in San Francisco. And what I loved about that kind of work was I went there at 8 o'clock in the morning and I picked up my tools and I made printing plates all day. And at the end of the day, I put my tools down and I left the shop and that was it. I was done. Then I became in my case, a teacher, but it could be any kind of modern professional. And, it was kind of like something I didn't have any time because there was always something more to do. I could grade papers, I could read another book, I could do more research, I could prepare for a meeting. It's just like there was never an off time, and therefore time became precious. And so that going back to the idea of you've got to create some off time and come to grips with it.
I mean, I was going to agree with that. Is that sometimes it's not just you internally feeling hurried, it's people around you pressuring you to do this, do this, do this. And so you have to set your boundaries with that, because it's always like, yeah, there's another thing to do, or you shouldn't have any downtime because you should always be productive. That's kind of the work environment sometimes. You've got this internal pressure all the time to be productive and do this and do that. And, so you have to fight that battle too.
Especially if you want to be productive, you've got to have the downtime. So.
Yeah, well, that actually, Robin, is a great segue. So I want to ask each of you to really seriously think about this. So we went through 7 habits, and it would be really cool if we could all walk away saying, okay, I'm going to do this one, or I'm going to keep this, just something. So let me read them to remind you all. Spending time with God, letting your yes be yes, dissenting from the kingdom of noise, prioritizing your yeses, accepting your uni-presence, practicing rhythms of rest, and eliminating a sense of hurry from our lives. So is there one that really resonates that you say, like, this is one I can do and I'm going to do, and it's important, it'll make a difference?
Which principle is dissenting from noise? I've got the book, but it's upstairs. Sorry.
3.
3.
Yeah. I do that a lot as spending, one way of doing that is spending time with God, but I think the other way was just finding quiet time.
Mm-hmm.
When he talked earlier about taking time every hour and a half or so, I think going outside and being just in nature and being quiet outside, which would be eliminating that noise, that internal noise. If you're in an office building, phones ringing, people talking, everything, just going outside and being by yourself. I think getting away from the noise. I think noise is my thing.
Like that, but that also gets, you kind of combine too, because you step away from the noise and you take a break too, a physical break.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Okay, Carol, set the bar.
Well, we both agreed that it would be rhythms of rest.
I'd like to sign up for that one too.
You signing up for rhythms of rest?
Yeah, will you do it with me?
Sabbath?
Yeah.
Yeah, Sabbath for sure. I was going to say Sabbath, we got to get back on too.
To prepare us to be up for a 6:45 call Monday morning.
And I think for me, the other one is, and I did this once this month, and it felt so good. Like I had a bunch of stuff to do and I had to go run errands, and normally I would be very hurried about it. And I just said, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to relax. I think actually, Nancy, it was the day I came up to church and I picked up something, and then you called me later. And I was just like, I am not going to let anybody else, nobody else needs to know that I have a million things to do. I'm just going to engage with the person in front of me. And it was really much more delightful. So I think I'm going to try that one.
I think for me, there are 2 that stand out. One about if I understand the principle about rejecting noise or ignoring the noise of the world, I realize I've started to do that. This may sound silly, but for me, the video recorder has become very valuable because now I used to religiously watch the PBS NewsHour, and I still do, but now I tape it. And when they're talking about something that I don't think is important, I just fast forward through it. I don't feel the obligation. I really don't care about Prince Harry and how he's getting along with his brother. And I don't need to. And football, I used to waste 9 hours every Sunday watching pro football. And now I wait till the game is half over, and then I fast forward for the first half, just skipping all the commercials. In a typical NFL football game, there's only 10 minutes to play. There's 3.5-hour broadcasts, but there's only 10 minutes of actual football. And I read that, I thought I better do something about this.
Sometimes, Paul, the commercials are more entertaining than the.
Well, I won't argue the point. And then the other is spending more time with God. I don't know how to separate out that spending more time being contemplative and duly considerate of my relationship with the divine and with the universe. I know it sounds pretentious, but you can't do too much of that. That's for sure.
I don't think it sounds pretentious.
But I agree that it sounds.
I don't either.
But no, what I was saying, I agree. You can never do too much of it.
And remember that the desert mothers and fathers spent a lot of time by themselves in silence with God. So you can't do too much of that.
Anyone else want to share real quick before we do prayer requests?
We can't hear you.
Did anybody else want to share real quick before we do prayer requests?
I was moved by, in the latest Texas Monthly, they were talking about somebody who'd been on the staff, and they said that he was really interested in politics, and he said that memory informed his belief that politics should focus on how we could advance the common good and help people who'd suffered. It was a sacred calling. And it just makes me think again about last week and the idea of calling and how it's a continuous process. And that not to feel like, well, okay, now that I'm not gainfully employed, I can't do anything, but one can always do something. And what part of it is, as you could see, having our grandchildren around gives us joy, but we can also be helpful. And we can be helpful in other ways, including saying something nice to somebody in a grocery store line who happens to be in front of you and is really slow. Can't find their change, as opposed to frowning at them. I was conscious about that not too long ago and thought, okay, they're doing the best that they can. They're just not being able to be very productive at that moment. And I thought it's going to be okay.
An opportunity to show grace. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording and ask for prayer requests and also talk about next week. Well, I guess I'll leave this on the next week for the recording. So we're done. So this was a quick 4-week thing, which is why I just encourage y'all to kind of spend time thinking about, how do I make a commitment to one or two things, like, and the ones that you guys shared were beautiful. So I just ask you to at least spend some time with God on that. And so what we're going to do is, Nancy and I were talking, and like, we wouldn't meet on Ash Wednesday. We probably won't meet the Wednesday of spring break because a lot of people are traveling. So if we start a Lenten study in the next week or so, in 2 weeks, we'll still be okay, because we'll have a week before Ash Wednesday, and then we can keep going. So if anybody has an idea for a study, please, if you don't have my email, send it to Nancy and she'll get it to me. And then we're going to go look at, I saw a couple today on our sites that we can use that had some interesting Lenten studies. So next week we'll have a couple, and we can view the trailers or the intros, and you guys can help us decide what we do next. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
I guess it was presumptuous to say, does everybody want to continue with the Lenten study?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you for leading us through this, Maria.
And
You're welcome.
Yes.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
very much.
for those of you who couldn't make every single one of these sessions for whatever reason, the recordings for them are posted on our website. And if you can't find them, just shoot an email to the office or call us, and I'll help you navigate there so that you can watch back the series if you have questions. And we'll be doing some research this week so we can present some options next week.
We'll be back if you'll have us.
Love to. So I know we're a few minutes over. Quick prayer request, because there's always a little more time to pray. Stop recording. Okay. Prayer requests.